Welcome to the Buddhist track. I am Lourdes Arguelles, and John Cobb 3 years ago told me, do you want to be involved in a small conference? And I said, yes, those are the kinds of conferences that I like. He said, well, would you like to organize a seminar, for having to do with Buddhism? I said, sure, that would be okay. I'm retired, and now I'm sort of relaxing and so forth. And here we are in this massive conference. And but this is a great opportunity to meet some of you again and to hear from some of my heroes, including Ajahn Sulak and Katrina Reed and others, and John Fries and so forth. So let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today, but also tell you a little bit about the entire program of the Buddhist track. Today we are asking Ajahn Sulak to open the Buddhist track, and you will see, for those of you who don't know him, as I introduce him, why I did so. He is one of my Buddhist heroes, and I think the Buddhist hero of many people. This afternoon at 4, Reverend Tetsuo Uno, who is a Pure Land Buddhist minister, as well as John Fries, who's a former monk in the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition and now teaches at the University of the West, will be presenting. Saturday at 11 o'clock, Lama Thupten Nima will be presenting. He is the spiritual director of Drikung Rinchen Sholen in Arcadia, and he will be presenting in Chinese with English translation. From 2 to 3:30, Larry Ward, which is a member of the Order of Intervened, Thich Nhat Hanh. From 4 to 5:30, Katrina Reed, who is the founder of Manzanita Village and 5 Changes, and a transgender activist. On Sunday at 11 o'clock, Kusala Bhikshu from Urban Dharma. At 2 o'clock, Tenshin Fletcher from the Zen Mountain Center. And then at 4, Karen Cardiero from San Diego State and I are going to try to pull everything together into something that makes a little bit of sense and that perhaps we can put into a monograph. And help with this movement that apparently was announced today. But because we are a Buddhist track, before I introduce Ajahn Sulak, we should begin with, let's see, if people recognize this. 2 minutes of meditation and get a little bit out of the busyness of the day. So, should I close that? Or maybe not? No, please begin. So let us begin just for a couple of minutes, if you don't mind.
Are you going to 226? I'm trying to find it.
So I would like to introduce, as I said, Ajahn Sulak Sibraksa, who is a Thai scholar activist. He's the founder and director today of a Thai NGO devoted to humanitarian, ecological, and spiritual activities. He has risked his life and freedom many times in trying to advance change in his country. He is known in the West as one of the founders of the International Network of Engaged Buddhism, or Engaged Buddhists, which has had as its patrons His Holiness Dalai Lama, Bhikkhu Mahagosananda, and Thich Nhat Hanh. In 1995, he was awarded the Right Livelihood Award, also known as the Alternative Nobel Prize. He has been a visiting professor at UC Berkeley, University of Hawaii, and Cornell University, and is an honorary fellow at the University of Llanspeter in Wales. He is the author of numerous books. We have some of these for sale here, such as Seeds for Peace and The Wisdom of Sustainability. Without further ado, Ajahn Sulak.
Thank you. There is a very famous Buddhist Siamese preacher. Sometimes he got thousands of people listening to him, and he usually spoke 1 hour. Sometimes there are 5 people. He also spoke for 1 hour. But I was asked to speak only for 45 minutes. And I won't go beyond that. And I'm very happy that this is small, it's beautiful. I think quality that counts. My talk will be in 3 parts. I will begin with wisdom, more specifically on what it means in Buddhism. Then I will talk about the cultivation of mindfulness and awareness and their importance for emancipatory change, both personal and social. And finally, I will discuss the miracle of mindfulness and why it is important for our contemporary world. So let's start. The title of my talk is Mindfulness and Awareness, Bringing Wisdom into Society. I know it sounds rather pretentious, elitist, condescending. Don't get me wrong. I am not saying that most people in society are uninformed, unaware, or just plain stupid. And therefore, it's the duty of enlightened people like you and me to bring wisdom to them or make them wise. On the contrary, I am contending that people may be clever, but not wise. And that perhaps many people are too clever to the point of being cynical or unwise. The price of preoccupation with intelligence is the twilight of wisdom. If you bear with me, things may become clearer as I proceed. First, let me unpack what wisdom means in Buddhism. And this necessarily implies that I have to talk a bit about mindfulness too. In Buddhism, wisdom has a special denotation that is different from the worldly sense or the general meaning of the word. Wisdom in Buddhism does not mean being clever or possessing intelligence and understanding of the kind associated with thinking. Wisdom is deeper than thinking. While thinking is restless, fleeting, and jumpy, wisdom is concentrated, calm, and prolonged state of mind, which also carries with it a sense of peace and happiness. This may be difficult to appreciate in an era in which multitasking, that is, switching between many different tasks, being subject to regular interruption, etc., is a common practice. In the world of multitasking, there's little time for thinking and even less for achieving wisdom. In any case, thinking is where there is. It happens. On the contrary, wisdom must be cultivated through spiritual training. Wisdom is a practice. Put another way, there is no pre-existing path to wisdom. Only through spiritual training is this path created. Mindfulness is the precondition for and companion of wisdom. Wisdom is always guided and supported by mindfulness. Mindfulness opens the way for body and mental contemplation. That is, it puts one on the path of wisdom. The path of wisdom practice interrogating in steps from the coarsest objects to the most refined. Is exemplified in the four foundations of mindfulness or the four satipatthana: body, feeling, citta, and dhamma. Four foundations of mindfulness or the four satipatthana is essential. These are the path leads progressively from the external, that is the body, or what you see, smell, sense, etc., to the internal, that is feeling, states of mind or citta, and dhamma. Dhamma is the content of the mind. It is the subtlest phenomena of all. Each of these four is a domain of personal experience, and each is a mode of exhibiting mindfulness. Of course, the mind is more difficult to grasp or pin down than the body, and therefore a high degree of wisdom is needed before tackling it. As our contemplation moves deeper into the mental states, our attachment to the domain of feeling starts to fade into the background. Feelings now appear external, then the primary focus turns inward to our mental states. With the establishment of mindfulness firmly based in the domain of mental states, the subtle phenomena that makes up the content of the mind are more readily perceptible. The mental phenomena are more refined than the states of mind they bring into being, and therefore more internal in relation to mental process. In the final analysis, attachment to these refined phenomena must be overcome in order to emancipate the mind. The more we contemplate the four domains of satipatthana, the more we become aware that everything is internal. But if everything is internal, what is external? In attempting to resolve this question, we reach a point where the whole division of inner and outer ceases to have much meaning. The highest and subtlest levels of meditation practice will enable us to cut the cordon knot of the inner and outer divisions. in order to contemplate the four Satipatthana until we reach the most refined levels of Dhamma, we must cultivate wisdom to a sharp and incisive degree. We must reach the state of wisdom in which we see the implications of what we are interrogating. For instance, we may know theoretically what the implications of having a body are, yet still not see them in ourselves. We still think and act very much as though the body is what we are. When we arrive at the true understanding through wisdom, it's like standing back and viewing the body from a detached perspective. When we perceive it truly with wisdom, a complete knowing arises that the body alone is in no way oneself. To sum up, we can define wisdom as the type of probing and profound understanding that arises only through spiritual training. It pulls together a broad spectrum of cause and effect relationships and understands intuitively how they interconnect on many different levels. The wise mind is meditative and contemplative. It is able to ponder the object calmly and clearly and knows the object with all its profound implications. What kind of knowledge does wisdom give rise to? Now, as it should be clear by now, the mind becomes wise not when it simply possesses new and unheard of data, facts, concepts, and so on. With wisdom, it's not so much that one sees something that one has never seen or heard of before. It's more like seeing something that one has seen many times before, but took it for granted, and now seeing it from a completely different angle. It's like when you approach a picture from a certain angle, you are able to see an entirely new picture. You begin to realize what you didn't know that you have always known all along. And this realization includes painful but potentially liberating knowledge that one may be secretly racist, narrow-minded, religiously fanatical, exploitative, and the like. Despite knowing full well at the level of thinking that these are unacceptable and condemnable structures, practices, and attitudes. On the other side, this new understanding comes from quite deep insight as a result of prolonged meditative practice. But there is also the risk of self-deception. Therefore, on the other side, the guidance or simply the presence of spiritual masters and friends is also essential for the cultivation of wisdom. They help us to push us beyond the confront zone of self-preservation, that is, towards the transcendence of the self, i.e., when you realize that there is no self to transcend in the first place. In short, it may not be possible to achieve wisdom alone in a hermeneutic fashion. Through the spiritual master, we come to a way of being in the world and being with others that we did know that we have always wanted it all along. For instance, Bhikkhu Putthathasa, my spiritual mentor, emphasized the importance of staying close to nature. He would look at the banyan tree in front of his hut and point to the plants and animals living peacefully in its shade. The first law of natural world, he claimed, is interdependence. Good friends encourage and criticize us. There are like external voices that help to make sure that we are still treading on the path of wisdom. The Buddha taught that friends are the whole of the holy life. That in quote, the whole of the holy life. In fact, in the Pali language, the word for loving kindness is metta, which is derived from the root word for friends, mitta. To be wise, one needs virtuous companions or kalyana mitta. Why is mindfulness also fundamental for society or social change? Since mindfulness is the precondition for the ever-present companion of wisdom, how can we cultivate mindfulness? These are the two main questions that I will attempt to answer below. Should social change coming first, then followed by personal or spiritual change? Or is it the other way around? Neither way is correct, because systematic and social change and spiritual change are the two sides of the same coin. We are a part of the world, social as well as natural. And hence, the kind of the world that we create and change also change and constitute us. In the process of changing the world, we are also transforming ourselves. This Buddhist insight is not fundamentally different from a stand of German idealism. Gandhi is right to assert, I quote, "Be the change you wish to see in the world," end of quote. Social change and spiritual consideration cannot be separated. Or to put it another way, social change without spiritual guidance is blind, while spiritual change without social change is important, because one often gets lost in self-examination, turn a blind eye to the structural causes of social suffering, and hence become complicit in them, while feeling like beautiful soul. Lest it be forgotten, religion is the heart of social change, and social change is the essence of religion. In a recent wonderful article in the Buddhist journal, Tricycle, David Lloyd nicely captured the inseparability of spiritual and social change. He writes, and it deserves to be quoted at length thus. This is where the quotation begins. There is an alternative way of understanding the Buddhist path, one that is not reducible to the either or of escaping this world or simply harmonizing it. The path of personal transformation is about deconstructing and reconstructing the self, or more precisely, the relationship between the self and its world. Because my sense of self is an impermanent psychological construct with no reality of its own. It is always insecure, haunted by dukkha. As long as I feel separate from the world I inhabit, we usually experience this as a sense of lack. Something is wrong with me. Something is missing. Buddhist practice helps wake us up from this bad dream. A really important social implication of this deconstruction and reconstruction of the self brings us back to social engagement, including eco-dhamma, the application of Buddhist teaching to our ecological situation. As we start to wake up and realize that we are not separate from each other, not from this wondrous earth, we also begin to realize that the ways we live together and the ways we relate to the earth need to be reconstructed as well. That means not only social engagement as service, but finding ways to address the problematic economic and political structures that are deeply transformation, and the part of social transformation are not really separate from each other. We must reclaim the concept of awakening from an exclusively individualistic therapeutic model and focus on how individual liberation also requires social transformation. Engagement in the world is how our personal awakening blossoms. It just so happens that the Buddhist tradition provides a wonderful archetype that can help us do just that. That's the part of the Bodhisattva. We overcome deep-rooted self-centered habits by working compassionately for the healing of our societies and the healing of the earth. There is what required for the Buddhist path to become truly liberative in the modern world. If we Buddhists can't do that or don't want to do it, then Buddhism might not be what our world needs right now. End of quote from David Lloyd. The Buddha pointed to the root cause of suffering, which are greed, hatred, and delusion. We need to understand them well in their numerous contemporary, structural, or systematic cases that are not always clear-cut at first sight. Suffering can be mitigated by right understanding, which begins with mindful breathing. Mindful breathing helps build up awareness, and with awareness, we realize what we are really doing and what we cannot solve problems alone. We need friends for our action to be effective. Sometimes we need nonviolent confrontation with the powers that be. Sometimes we need to dialogue with people, including our oppressors or enemies. Sometimes we need solitude, silence, and time to cultivate wisdom in order to understand the situation well before engaging with it. The root of the word Buddha means to be awake. When we are awakened to simplicity and humility and aware of the suffering engendered by greed, hate, and delusion, our consciousness is restructured. When we become mindful about ourselves and others, we will naturally try to restructure society in a Dhammic way. As mentioned above, restructuring individual consciousness and changing society are complementary practices that are badly needed today. The Buddha was a simple and humble monk, and so were all the great Buddhist spiritual masters, past and present. The Dalai Lama is also a simple monk. The Buddha's teaching provides a unique way of seeing the world, which, if properly understood and practiced, will lead to a noble life. The Awakened One, the Buddha, taught us that the wheel of righteousness must control the wheel of power. That the powers that be, especially the rulers, must have only one overriding concern, that of upholding the Dhamma. If we go to the Buddha and ask for a simple formula to resolve our modern predicaments, he might answer, I breathe, therefore I am. Breathing is the most important element in our lives and in the life of every living being. Try holding our breath for 5 minutes, then you are dead. Breathing goes on day and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But what do we breathe in? Anxiety, greed, hatred, and delusion. This Ajahn breath for peace exercise is very useful, and I have been practicing it ever since. This exercise is based on a technique called Samatha Bhavana, which helps us maintain calmness. Once we have mastered the simple exercise, we are ready to practice insight meditation, Vipassana Bhavana, to arrive at a critical awareness of the self and to displace the primacy of the self. In this way, we become less and less selfish and begin to seek peace and justice based on real understanding of ourselves and the world. We will no longer be ruled by our greed, hatred, and delusion. Thus, let us meditate for world peace, social justice, and environmental balance, beginning with our breathing. I breathe in calmly and I breathe out mindfully. Once I have sown seeds of peace within myself, I will begin to reduce selfish desire and reconstitute my consciousness. Linking my head and my heart, I see the world holistically as a sphere filled with living beings who are all related to me. I expand my understanding with love to help build a more non-violent world. I vow to live simply and offer myself to serve those who are oppressed, exploited, and dominated. By the grace of the Compassionate One, with the help of good friends, may I be a partner in mitigating the suffering of the world, so it will become a wholesome place for all living beings to dwell in peace. Lastly, why is mindfulness and Buddhist wisdom still pertinent for the contemporary world? David Lloyd's quote had partially answered this question, but let me be a bit more specific. The current state of the world is almost dystopian. The future is ominous. Just a few glimpses would surface. According to the latest report from Oxfam, 80 individuals have as much wealth as 3.5 billion people. That's half of the world's population. Is this what the democratic promotion of individual rights over the decades really amounted to? The creation of a handful of very powerful individuals who can threaten the well-being of humanity at large. Or take the fact that for an average American worker to have the same income per year as a CEO, excluding bonuses, of a big company, he or she may have to work for 400 years or up to 1,000 years if CEO bonuses is included. Or take the fact the average lifetime of a person in a developed country is 80 years old, while that of someone in the least developed country like Sierra Leone is 46 years old. From the perspective of the latter, the former is seemingly immortal. Also, in the former group, only 5 to 6 out of 1,000 children die before they are 5 years old. In the second group, the figure is up to 200. Inequality kills. It makes life nasty, brutish, and short. Many in this world simply do not live long enough to enjoy what might be called a good life. Not to mention the cultivation of inner peace and wisdom. The rate of warming, the rate of global warming is also alarming. From rising temperature, increasing number of hurricanes each year, melting Arctic iceberg, not to mention tsunami. And I have even mentioned about wars, religious violence, ethnic conflict, terrorism, the rise of right-wing political forces, the anti-immigration policies of the developed society, sex trafficking, permanent unemployment, the expansion of global slums. In short, Buddhists need to have a clear position on systematic violence. That is the structural manifestation of greed, hate, and illusion. In my book, Wisdom of Sustainability, I have mentioned this at large, and they're on sale there. And if you buy them, I give you my autograph. This is promoting capitalism also. Humanity is like on a train approaching a precipice. I am intentionally using this apocalyptic tone because I want to stress that only a miracle can save humanity. Buddhism offers such a miracle. The miracle of walking on the earth mindfully, of touching the depth and sacred presence of each moment. Mindfulness helps us to see the traits that dominate our consciousness: hatred and love, ignorance and wisdom, fear and courage. When we acknowledge the full range of qualities within us, our ignorance begins to fade, enabling wisdom and compassion to shine through. The Buddha pointed to the miracle in a well-known story. A monk told the Buddha, "I have been meditating for years to be able to walk on water." The Buddha replied, "It would be better to hire a boatman." Another reader asked the Buddha, "What practice your followers do?" The Buddha answered, "They walk, stand, lie down, sit, and drink. The man said, what is special about that? The Buddha explained, while walking, they know they are walking. When standing, they know they are standing. When lying down, they know they are lying down. The Buddha could have added, when protesting non-violently, they know they are protesting non-violently. In our social engagement, is our social engagement really an attempt to change the oppressive and exploitative system? Or is it just an attempt to beautify it and give it a friendly face? With capitalism, we are dealing with a system that has regularly revolutionized itself by incorporating anti-capitalist forces. Here, Buddhist understanding of capitalism may be lacking. For instance, traditionally, we often associate capitalism with negative things like greed and consumerism. And we say that we should oppose generosity to greed and giving to having or consumerism. But now capitalism says that we can be generous by being greedy, or we can save the world by consuming. The more we consume, the greater the number of children we save, and so on. It is not difficult to think of products or advertisements that sell in this way. Without mindfulness, awareness and wisdom, our moral compass will be lost. Our social engagement may turn out to a feel-good way of feeling. The capitalist beast that is a form of self-attachment will actually changing nothing. Our non-violent protest may be a form of unwitting collaboration. Is what I just said something new to you, or what you don't know that you already know? The same logic can be applied to helping others. When helping others, they know that they are helping others. We may become addicted to helping or saving others. Thus, saving others makes us feel and look good. Thus, helping others makes us feel superior. And are we secretly enjoying this feeling? Are we helping others in order to keep them lowly, pitiful, and unequal to us? That is, to keep them at a distance from us, so that we can continue helping them. Are we willing to sacrifice ourselves and help others so that they will never be better than us? In short, we must confront suffering and acknowledge our share of moral responsibility, both collectively and individually, in the perpetual of suffering and in the maintenance of structural violence. We need to develop not only mindful ways of being in the world and of relating to others, but also a viable Buddhist alternative to the oppressive and exploitative mainstream political-economic forms. It's now or never. And this difficult practice begins with mindfulness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajahn Sulak. Questions, issues, concerns, protests?
You are all enlightened, or you all entirely disagree with me.
Full of wisdom.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to
reflect back to you my own response and my own personal journey. Having, at 12, I joined the Young Communists in the UK, and have been, for much of my life as a Buddhist teacher, very opposed to capitalism. And I just really want your reflection on, if we oppose capitalism unconditionally, do we not create, and I say that being one step removed for some very wealthy people who are thinking very, very hard about systemic solutions. So I'm concerned a little bit about the blanket condemnation of the capitalist paradigm, since that's all we have now, since the breakdown of the Berlin Wall. And I'm wondering your thoughts on how we can rethink revising capitalism, or allying, being allies with capitalists in positions of power to rethink a new paradigm rather than simply being against.
Now, if we take the Buddha seriously, greed, hate, and delusions are the root cause of suffering. Capitalism, of course, is the greed in the modern form, capitalism. And of course, capitalism is not only greed, it's also linked with violence. The natural corporation operate with violence. So greed and hatred go together. And worse than that, when you have advertisement and modern education only with their head and without their heart, it's promoting illusion. Unless we take this seriously, we will compromise ourselves. And we think we are Buddhists, we are goody people. I think we are, a lot of Buddhists are wonderful people, but they are goody. And particularly, Western Buddhists, who are from the upper class, middle class, if they don't realize that their lifestyle contributes so much suffering in the world, I think that they're not practicing Buddhism, but they practice escapism. Mindfulness is wonderful to be peaceful, and let them die, let the war go on. Now, of course, it's not easier to overcome capitalism, as it is not easy to overcome greed. But the first step, we must not compromise with capitalism. We must not compromise with consumerism. But if we cannot get rid of, we cannot eradicate it entirely, we must contain it. Make capitalism become less effective. That is, we must realize that transnational cooperation must have its limits. We have to challenge Coca-Cola openly. Samdong Rinpoche, the former Prime Minister of Tibet, refused to take all these bottled water. That is, we must demand that everyone must have free water. Now, water is now controlled by very few companies. Like drugs are controlled by very few companies. So if we say we have no power to challenge them, we must challenge them. That is, we must look for alternative medicine. We must look for alternative way of living, seriously. My friend, he's not even a Buddhist. You know, he wrote, what's his name? He wrote, school is much more dangerous than people realize. He said in the Middle Ages, people were forced to go to church once a week. But now our children are forced to go to school 5 days a week. And school teach them to be violent, teach them to be selfish, teach them to be nationalistic. And unless we oppose this, we just go along, practice our meditation and send our children to school like that. So I feel that if Buddhists are to be taking the teaching of Buddha seriously, we must make a stand much more radical than we are. You don't have to agree with me, but that's my approach.
I just feel, based on my experience, that Buddhists are goody-goody, and I know some people who are in dialogue with, well, we can take an example that we've all heard of, for example, Bill Gates, who who is putting billions of dollars into very well considered health plans, education plans. I mean, there is value for education, particularly in the southern world. I think I'm just responding from a personal perspective that I changed my blanket view of capitalism as all bad as I got to know people who were very smart and very caring and looking at how they could utilize the model that already exists for a greater benefit, coming from a place of wanting benefit. So my curiosity or my reaction has been against the divisiveness in human thinking, and including Buddhist thinking. It's we are Buddhist and there is the other, and it hasn't sat well with me.
I think you're quite right. Otherwise, the Buddhists feel that we are so great. No, I think we are interrelated. You see, we are against capitalism, but we must not be against the capitalists. Rockefeller had done so many bad things, but now Stephen Rockefeller is a wonderful practicing Buddhist. And not only that, he's one of those who care for earth's rights, care for animal rights. So that's why we have to be using our wisdom carefully. Don't condemn people. Like the Christians said, we must hate sin, but not the sinners.
Exactly.
But at the point, we must learn to destructure the violent structure. If I may say so, I must advertise my book. You see, you have to destructure society. Without understanding structural violence, I think we are at a loss. Yes.
In a book you wrote called Seeds of Peace, you were talking about the Pali word for development the translation in Pali is madness or craziness. Do you remember about that? Like the idea of development, like economic development.
Yes.
The Pali word for it, I can't remember what it is, but it's...
Patana is make it bad.
Right.
You see, and we use that word development. But even development, you go back to the Latin root, progressio. In Latin, it means madness.
Right.
You see, I think we have to take words carefully.
Right.
You see, Ivan Illich is very clear on that. You see, he's of course, he was a Roman Catholic priest. But he refused, he 2 books. One book is education, is brainwashing, and medicine, Western medicine is killing. And he had cancer, I mean, it is here. And he never go to hospital. And he would never take any Western medicine. Yeah, I met him last time when Jerry Brown was still mayor of Oakland. We stayed together. And at that time, the cancer was, and he used also meditation practice to show that the negative element of Western medicine is much more profound, much more dangerous than we realize.
Right. I think, so the difference between cultivation, like bhavana,
Precisely.
and then development, which is like patana, and
That's right.
make the distinction between those
Yeah.
two.
The Japanese now use the word bhavana and not patana.
Right.
The Japanese, who follow the Western model much more than anybody else in Asia. But even now the Japanese are changing. I think what we need is to make people realize that to change.
Yeah.
Japanese Buddhism used to be wonderful in caring people for the next world. But for the first time, the Japanese Buddhists are now concerning social justice in this world, caring for the living and dying.
Ajahn Sulak, can you tell us some of the things that are happening in Thailand, Myanmar, sort of update us in some of the events, because we don't have here a press that really, gives us critical perspectives on some of the events that are happening in that area.
Very, very good question. But I need another lecture. No, my country is a very good example of blindly follow the West, because we claim that we were never colonized. And we feel, even concede that we look down upon all our neighbors. And my country is perhaps the worst country, perhaps worse than Japan in this respect. Because the Japan have now realized, because they were defeated in the Second World War, and we have not yet been defeated. You see, and the people who oppress us, not the foreigners, our own people, much more difficult. Now, regarding Burma, very interesting country. It was the worst dictatorship in Southeast Asia since 1962. And since the West boycotted it, it went more and more under the Chinese Empire. But they realized it recently. And part of that realization, it come to the Buddhist monks. And if I may say so, at our international network against Buddhists, we have dialogue with the Buddhist monk in Burma. And they told me, the Burmese monk said, Ajahn Sulak, we have bad karma. That's why we deserve this dictatorship. I said that the long interpretation, the teaching of Buddha, we all have bad karma, good karma, which we cannot prove. But the Buddha said we can make the present karma. We change our structural, our consciousness, and we can change our thinking, we can change our speech, our action. With Kalyana Mitra, we can challenge dictatorship. And the monk did that. You may have heard of the suffering revolution, starting 8 years ago. The monk did that. They came out to challenge the dictators. They were killed, they were beaten, they were tortured, but they kept on reciting Metta Karuniya Sutta. Metta Karuniya Sutta, the Buddha, a mother willing to sacrifice her life for her child, her only child, let practice loving kindness to all beings. They did that. Because the Burmese are much more connected to Buddhism, I think they feel bad. That's partly, not the whole, they're changing. But I also talked to them. I said, you are now changing, be careful. You may jump from the devil to the deep blue sea. The Chinese empire with the devil. Now you jump into the American empire, maybe worse. The Americans are look much better than the Chinese. They come with friendship, they come to help, but at the same time they come with Coca-Cola, McDonald's, and that sometimes very dangerous. So these young Burmese, some of them who put in jail 10 years, they're taking this seriously. So Burma is very good case. But the lady Aung San Suu Kyi, who was put into house arrest for so many years, she was a great heroine. She now finished because she wanted to become president. And once you want to become president, even elect like Obama, you never do anything. And I don't think she would even be elected. But even so, she keep her mouth shut because she's afraid to lose her votes. But the young people, young monks, and even Muslim, Christian, these people are to look at. And when you look in Burma, you say, oh, some monks are against the Rohingya, but they only few. Many of them are doing wonderful things. Yes.
Can you speak a little bit about what INEB is doing at the moment? And maybe tell...
INEB, we have also a leaflet there,
That's the international.
These are free. Yes. The books are to be sold. Yes. International Network Against Buddhists started 25 years ago. The idea is that if Buddhists only meditate and to be nice, to be happy, I think that's escapism. Secondly, many Buddhists become naturalistic. To be Sinhala is to be Buddhist. And the Tamils are bad. The Hindus are bad. Kill them. The last president, luckily he was not re-elected. He killed 50,000 Tamil after they have put their white flag. You know. Again, you see, Zen at war, the Japanese meditate seriously, and they went out to kill more effectively. So you have to change. I nip it to we use small b Buddhism, not capital B. You must link yourself with nationalism, and then you have to challenge capitalism, consumerism. These are things we are doing. And we are now starting a new INEP Buddhist college, hoping next year. We have done what we call civic education movement the last 15 years, cultivating alternative education. We work in Burma, Laos, Cambodia, India, Sri Lanka, but now we want to have a full higher education. So engage Buddhism. And this is that you can read, and if you are interested, perhaps you can also link with your Buddhist, the West here. You see, we want to link with Schumacher College in England, Naropa in this country.
And maybe Pitzer College.
Yes, indeed.
Here you have the person who can link with you.
Yeah,
Yes,
wonderful.
this college.
Yes, indeed. Please be in touch with us. We are open. You know, every college has its strength and weakness, and we can learn from each other. Okay?
Any other questions?
Is Unno coming? Is he next to me?
He will be here at 4 o'clock,
Oh, I see.
so.
I knew his father very well, Thai.
You know, what we wanted to bring is people from different traditions, from different countries, from different ethnic backgrounds, and so forth. So you started today as, you know, one of the most renowned Buddhist elders from Thailand and so forth. So we have Tetsuo Uno, who is from Japan, Pure Land Buddhist. We have John Fries, another generation from the Thich Nhat Hanh. And actually, something that is happening more and more often is dual belongers.
Good.
You know, people who are Buddhist but also practice in other traditions. And I think John is one of those.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I feel a connection with Thich Nhat Hanh, but also with Advaita Vedanta, like from South India. So I feel like I get nourished by both streams.
And we're seeing that more and more.
Yes.
And so it's a real connection.
Lovely.
With different traditions in one being and interconnected. So anyway, we really want to thank you very,
Well,
very
I
much.
thank all of you.
And
Be very kind, patient to my talk.
and somebody, I am going to buy a few of his books, and
Please,
she's having.
yes, we leave this with you, and
Yes, but I don't
and
want you to sign
yes,
mine.
afterwards you can clear with Sombat, then he can come and collect the books
Yes,
and the
of
money.
Of course. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much. Very kind. Lovely.